Hello, my name is Ricardo Suarez. I'm a Principal Advocate at AWS, and in this session, I'm going to talk to you about migrating enterprise applications to the cloud. There are many different drivers why customers initiate their journey to AWS. They might initially be driven by compelling events such as exiting or consolidating of data centers, cost objectives, hardware or software refreshes. But the conversation is changing, and businesses now expect more than just cost savings and efficiency. Even though customers typically save between 25 and 50% in AWS versus on-premises costs, they want to reinvest those cost savings and move faster as businesses, transform customer experiences, unlock the data they've got within the business, and to be able to deliver digital transformation initiatives. AWS has the most experience helping all types of organization migrate to the cloud, and customers such as NL, where we migrated over 5,000 workload instances in 9 months, or Coca-Cola, where we moved more than 600 workloads to AWS in under 14 months. AWS and our partners have helped customers like these successfully migrate all types of workloads to AWS, including large-scale migrations of tens of thousands of servers and the enterprise applications that you depend upon. And based on those years of experience, we've developed methodologies, best practices, tools, and services to help simplify and accelerate migration. Let's take a look at what they look like. So how do we think about migration? There are 3 phases you need to consider when approaching large-scale migration. First is the assessment phase, where we build the business case and perform a cloud readiness assessment to understand the business value that moving to AWS will bring. The second Mobilize phase, where you use further tools to collect and analyze data, identify dependencies and risk, and help understand and determine the detailed application level migration approach. In the third migration and modernization phase, tools will play an increasingly significant role in the execution of the migration, including things like setting up a secure landing zone to make sure you set up consistent governance and control policies that align to your existing business ones, reduce downtime for the users of enterprise applications, as well as providing transparency for the application owners during the migration process. If we look a little deeper, for each of these phases, there are a number of tools, techniques, patterns, and services that can help you accelerate your migration to AWS. The AWS Partner Network provides consultancy as well as their own tools that help customers migrate successfully to AWS. And here at the bottom of the screen, you can see just a small selection of the partners and the tools they provide. Now, I'm not going to go and cover all these tools in this presentation, but I do recommend that if you're not aware of these or you want to dive deep, that you explore other AWS migration sessions. Let's look at the assessment phase. Now, during the assessment phase, you will build the business case, which is an essential part of every migration. The use of guided questionnaires and engaging stakeholders across business and IT in workshops will allow you to collect the data and produce reports to help inform the migration planning process and help identify key areas that you might need to address. For example, training and skills development. When we look at the value of migrating to AWS, it is easy initially to focus just on the cost savings of migration. However, when you think about enterprise applications specifically, we can use the Cloud Business Value Framework to look across all the benefits the business will get when migrating those workloads. The ability to right-size applications and optimize on the right instance type, including using different processor types and architectures, will allow you to optimize the cost of running those workloads and potentially help you reduce any licensing risks. Removing undifferentiated heavy lifting from your technical resources will allow them to focus more on creating business value for your customers. Reducing the downtime of your enterprise applications by leveraging the AWS global infrastructure and regional availability zones, the best-in-class security, and having a robust disaster recovery will allow you to increase the operational resilience of those applications and can help you reduce your P0 and P1 issues by 90%. Finally, being able to leverage AWS services to innovate and add new capabilities to your enterprise applications, or to be able to just spin up and spin down those enterprise applications at very short notice, will allow you to become more agile and innovative. Foundation to the migration is making sure that you do a cloud readiness assessment to make sure that you've got the right building blocks in place to successfully migrate your enterprise applications. This assessment is important to make sure that you maximize the value of those migrations. Your enterprise applications will be migrated using a number of different patterns, so knowing which pattern requires supporting work to be done. Now, the output of this process is to rate the readiness across 6 dimensions using the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework, or CAF. These dimensions are categorized into business and technical capabilities, and they include business value, people and governance on the business side, as well as platform security and operations on the technical side. Whilst readiness assessment tools try and identify the business general readiness for migration, tools like TSO Logic allow you to build the business case to migrate by highlighting the financial impact of different software licensing strategies and help you build an understanding of the total cost of ownership of your enterprise applications and how you can optimize these with different AWS offerings. Now, the output of this phase is to have your business stakeholders and enterprise application owners bought into the migration. So now let's look at the next phase, the Mobilize phase. And during the Mobilize phase, you will determine the migration path for your enterprise applications. When determining the migration path and selecting the best migration approach, you will need to consider a few things. A number of enterprise workloads have well-known and well-understood migration patterns, so understanding which ones you can leverage is going to be very useful. You may identify enterprise applications that might have some specific support or licensing requirements. And finally, you may need to make sure that you collect enough data and create good technical profiles so you can map these characteristics to optimize resources on AWS and select the right migration approach. So let's take a look at some of these well-known enterprise workloads and how customers are migrating these to AWS. SAP is an enterprise application we are seeing customers increasingly accelerate in their efforts to bring to cloud. SAP and AWS have been working together since 2008, and this decade-long partnership has been driven by working backwards to figure out what customers want and need for running SAP in the cloud. We've introduced many industry firsts for SAP, including the first SAP certified cloud offerings with 2 TB and 4 TB instances. And the breadth of SAP certified instances on AWS gives customers the best possible choice for their workloads. Starting from a few 100 GB memory, we can scale all the way up to 100 TB for SAP HANA Business Warehouse environments. And the speed and ease of deployment on AWS brings agility to customers' SAP workloads that they have not experienced elsewhere, allowing customers to experiment and try new ideas. And finally, along with our innovation, we're consistently working towards reducing the cost and passing those savings on to customer to further improve the total cost of ownership. One of the key innovations that has made running SAP workloads on AWS so compelling is the AWS Nitro platform, which is truly unique, underpins our ability to innovate and offer new instance types, and provides both better performance and native AWS integration. AWS has certified more HANA instances types than any other provider, and we have a lot of experience understanding what works and what doesn't work when it comes to running SAP workloads and in-memory workloads in the cloud. If we look more closely at this, the AWS portfolio of SAP certified HANA instances is truly unique to AWS, and we have more supported cloud-native instances by far. Supporting the most demanding customers means you have to support the largest, most complex ones, and only AWS can go as far as 100 TB scale out with SAP HANA Cloud Native instances. We now have thousands of customers running SAP on AWS, and hundreds of them are global multinational enterprises. Lamborghini took 6 months to move and is already seeing 60% performance improvement, and they have reduced their cost of infrastructure by 50%. From SAP, now let's take a look at Windows. AWS has run Windows on AWS for over a decade, and we have hundreds of thousands of customers bringing Windows to AWS, including customers like Autodesk, which has been running Windows on AWS for over 10 years, and Salesforce, which has over 10,000 Windows dedicated instances on AWS. With this experience, moving Windows workloads of all types across different market segments and verticals, you can feel assured migrating your Windows workloads to AWS. Windows is truly a first-class citizen on AWS, and enterprise applications that you run on Windows environments will be able to benefit from the 11 years of innovation of running these enterprise workloads on AWS. Now, on this screen, you can just see some of those innovations across Windows Server, Microsoft SQL Server, and .NET. A good example is when migrating your Microsoft SQL Server workloads. You can benefit from the industry-leading performance of Amazon EC2 instances powered by the Intel Xeon processors that provide you with a consistent experience and an easy migration to cloud, as well as being able to accelerate your encryption for those workloads on Microsoft that are using TDE. Another example is Amazon FSx for Windows File Server. Many customers use enterprise applications that use Windows file systems. So Amazon FSx for Windows File Server is a fully managed Windows server that integrates with other AWS services. This compatibility and performance is particularly important when moving enterprise workloads that require Windows shared file systems, and many CRM, ERP, or even your own .NET applications, as well as home directories, use this frequently. This service has many features. Some of them include supporting key NTFS features such as extended attributes, SMB 311 support, integration with Microsoft Active Directory, including trust relationships with on-premises Active Directory servers, and the support of distributed file systems, DFS, that allows you to enable multi-AZ deployments. Many organizations struggle with migrating their legacy enterprise applications, many of which have tight dependencies with older, unsupported operating systems. And moreover, getting extended support for these applications does not resolve the inevitable end of support problem. It just delays the inevitable. To mitigate these challenges, AWS offers the End of Support Migration Platform, EMP, for Windows Server. EMP for Windows Server includes technology and expert guidance to migrate your legacy applications from Windows Server 2003, 2008 and 2008 R2 to newer supported versions on AWS without any refactoring. The EMP technology decouples the applications from the underlying OS, enabling the migration of those critical applications to newer supported versions of Windows Server on AWS. And once on AWS, you can further optimize the operations and costs of these applications. When migrating Windows workloads to AWS, there are a number of flexible licensing approaches provided. You can use flexible pay-as-you-go licensing, where you may not have existing licenses and you're charged when you launch the service and as you use them. So for example, running EC2 with Windows instances. Or you can bring license mobility benefits to AWS or bring licenses to AWS without paying for software assurance. Now, capturing enterprise application operational characteristics using the tools mentioned earlier will allow you to understand how to migrate to potentially different instance types and process architectures so that you can optimize against performance and cost. The Application Discovery Service will allow you to capture data points such as network utilization, disk I/O and throughput, and CPU utilization, and then provide that data so you can make optimized choices against business requirements. And tools like TSO Logic will allow you to create detailed scenarios and understand the financial impact. Once you've profiled your applications, you can then look against the right compute options against the wider selection available, from Intel-based Xeon Skylake processors through to Amazon-powered Graviton ARM processors, or speeding up your machine learning workloads using NVIDIA TensorFlow GPUs. We believe that by providing greater choice, customers can choose the right compute to power their applications and workloads. And customers have told us that processor choice matters to them, and we're already seeing customers testing their applications against these new instance and processor types. Managing licensing for enterprise applications can be time-consuming, but as customers migrate to the cloud, making sure that you're on top of this is a critical consideration. AWS offers flexible choices for customers that should provide everything you need to help with this. License Manager is a service that simplifies software license management for hybrid use cases across both cloud and on-premises. And with License Manager, you get the flexibility to control and track compliant license usage and proactively prevent overusage. You no longer need to worry about expensive penalties from vendor audits. License Manager is dependent to give you the flexibility and control in administering licenses based on your organizational structure and needs. It is not tied to a specific vendor, and you can bring software licenses from Microsoft, Oracle, SAP, IBM, and many others. And it helps you to maintain visibility into license consumption, regardless of whether you want to enforce licensing policy throughout your organization or provide this to individual teams. AWS License Manager also includes built-in integration into many AWS services such as EC2, System Manager, CloudFormation, and others. Another approach that customers are taking to migrate from proprietary licensing regimes to open source equivalents. And this allows them to free them from organization, from disruptions caused by unexpected and sometimes punitive license policy changes. Migrating, for example, .NET Core. Now, whilst not all the features are there that are available, you can use this to migrate your .NET Core applications and then take advantage of AWS innovations such as running .NET Core on AWS Lambda or on Amazon Container Services. You can migrate Microsoft SQL Server from running on Windows to Linux, and we provide a migration assistance that can help you do that. We also have a database migration service, DMS, that allows you to migrate proprietary database to a number of open source alternatives such as MySQL or Postgres. And we have hundreds of thousands of customers that have used this since the service started. And finally, many enterprise applications are built on Java, and with Amazon Corretto is certified to meet the Java SE standards. It can be used as a drop-in replacement for many Java SE distributions. Amazon provides quarterly updates that include performance enhancements as well as security fixes to make sure that running those critical Java applications can carry on. Customers that are thinking of migrating using VMware Cloud on AWS could also potentially save on licensing costs with Cluster Custom CPU feature, which allows customers to configure clusters with reduced CPU cores to help licensing costs for those enterprise applications that are tied to CPU cores. Now, some things you need to be aware about if you use this is that this is available through the VMware Cloud on AWS service, and that changing the number of cores does not affect the price of the hosts. And once you create your custom cluster, you cannot change this post-deployment, and all hosts within the cluster have to have the same number of CPU cores. Migrating applications to AWS is well understood and well proven, and we've identified a number of patterns, and we call these the 7 Rs. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on all of the 7 Rs here, but let me take a look at some of the ones that are relevant to enterprise applications. Replatform, or lift, tinker and shift as it's sometimes called, allows you to leverage AWS managed services with like-for-like functionality. For example, using services like Amazon RDS instead of your own database, or using Amazon FSx for Windows instead of your own file shares. Repurchase, some enterprise applications that are provided as managed versions and delivered as software as a service, and you may choose to migrate that way. Now, if you do that, then the AWS Marketplace allows you to procure many SaaS enterprise applications to simplify the procurement mechanism. Rehosting, sometimes called lift and shifting, allows you to move your virtual machines as is into AWS Cloud, and then allows you to use AWS services to optimize the provisioning, managing, and operating of those instances. And relocate, i.e. don't touch but move, allows you to migrate applications to AWS without making any changes to the applications themselves. And in many cases, you'll be able to do that with no downtime. Those enterprise applications are relocated to run on VMware Cloud on AWS environments. And because of the high-speed, low-latency integration this provides, you can integrate AWS services natively and start to modernize your applications, sometimes without having to make any code changes to your applications. Now, before you can migrate, you need to set up your AWS environments. AWS Control Tower helps customers set up AWS multi-account environments or landing zones. And this is the easiest way to set up and govern a new, secure, multi-account AWS environment based on best practices established through AWS's experience working with thousands of enterprises. You can provision new AWS accounts in a few clicks, knowing that those accounts will conform to your company-wide policies, and Control Tower will help you get started quickly with governance and best practices built in. So, now let's go to the third phase, the migration and modernization phase. To get the most out of your AWS migration, you're going to need to develop a modernization approach for your enterprise applications. Now, for some of these, this will mean optimizing how you run your applications because it's too difficult to change those applications or architecture or code. So for these, optimizing at an infrastructure level to improve performance, availability, and cost. So this is on the left-hand side. You might evolve existing enterprise applications by leveraging managed services such as Amazon RDS for databases or Amazon FSx for Windows file shared systems. For others, you may be able to leverage cloud-native approaches as you refactor those applications. Now, you can expect you'll fit more of your application workloads on the left-hand side in the improve, and then you'll have a smaller amount as you go off onto the right-hand side, and this is perfectly normal. When migrating your enterprise workloads, ensuring that you've got the right hybrid capabilities will be key to ensure that your upstream and downstream integrations for those workloads continues to function. AWS offers the broadest and deepest set of services to address the broad spectrum of hybrid use cases, providing you with the choice of application integration capabilities and infrastructure capabilities to help those applications keep working during the migration. Now, for customers migrating VMware vSphere workloads, we provide the best capabilities with VMware Cloud on AWS, and I'm going to talk more about those in a minute. Minimizing downtime for users is one of the most important factors when migrating your applications. And you have several options that you can choose, both provided by AWS as well as our partners. Cloud Endure Migration is an agent-based migration tool that's free to AWS customers, and that allows you to rehost large numbers of machines quickly from multiple source platforms. These could be physical as well as virtual and from other cloud providers. And you can do that and migrate these to AWS without having to worry about compatibility, performance disruption, or long cutover windows. Now, if you need an agentless approach, AWS Server Migration Service, or SMS, can also help you migrate large numbers of on-premise VMware or Hyper-V or Azure workloads to AWS while minimizing downtime for your users. AWS SMS allows you to automate, schedule, and track incremental replications of live server volumes, making it easier to coordinate large-scale server migrations. Now, for customers with VMware vSphere workloads running on enterprise applications such as SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, VMware Cloud on AWS will let you vMotion those workloads across environments with little downtime, allow you to use your existing familiar skills, tools, and processes as part of your migration. You can then leverage the expansive suite of AWS services to optimize those workloads using the 200 plus instance types, or you can reduce your licensing costs by using things like the custom CPU clusters. You can integrate your existing vSphere environments into your data center with VMware Cloud on AWS, setting up VPNs via internet connectivity or using services such as AWS Direct Connect with or without a VPN, which allows you to provide a more predictable network performance, which is useful when migrating your workloads. HCX, or Hybrid Cloud Extensions, provides a seamless integration and workload mobility between your on-premises vSphere environments and VMware Cloud on AWS, which means you can migrate workloads with zero downtime. AWS Migration Hub provides a single place to track the progress of application migrations across AWS and partner solutions. You can discover your on-premise portfolio using AWS Discovery Service and import data from other sources such as CMDB or other discovery tools you might be using. Once imported, you can view server information and group servers into applications to help plan your migration and track the progress of your migration using the migration tools that best fit your needs. And these can be either AWS tools or AWS partner tools. AWS Migration Hub can manage migrations in any AWS region that has the necessary migration tools available and is available to all AWS customers at no additional charge. And you only pay for the cost of the migration tools you use and the resources being consumed on AWS. We have over 40 certified migration competency partners that can help you with your migration journey. And these partners have large migration practices and experience in delivering large-scale migration projects. Madre Leña de Red de Gas, MRG, is a good example of an organization migrating to AWS and using an AWS partner to help them. In 2018, Madre Leña de Gas decided to migrate from their data center to public cloud to increase its responsiveness and move beyond the limitations and recurrent infrastructure costs. In just over 3 months, with the support of Linker, an AWS Premier Consulting partner, it had completed 90% of its data center migration. So, if we look at the business value of migrating, we can see that according to a white paper produced by IDC, businesses see an average infrastructure saving of 31%. Their technical resources are more productive with a 62% uplift in productivity. They are more resilient with 7 times fewer downtime hours, and they're able to innovate faster. So that's the end of this presentation. I've talked about what you need to think about when migrating your enterprise applications to the cloud and how AWS products and services, together with AWS Partner Network, can help you to migrate to AWS too. If you're interested in getting started, check out these links and some of the tools that I've talked about in this session to kickstart your migration to the cloud.